This is Napoleon Bonaparte. He was born in 1769 and died in 1821 at the age of 51. Napoleon was born a French military leader who became Emperor of France from 1805 to 1814. Napoleon was born in Corsica, which is an island off of France in the Mediterranean. His ancestors immigrated there from Tuscany. His father's side was Italian and his mother's side comes from Genoa. Both are descendants of minor nobility. Because of his modest noble background, he was able to receive an education greater than the average person in Corsica, and so he went to the French mainland to study. When he was 9, he went to a religious school first and then got a scholarship at a military academy. Italian was his first language, and this gave him an accent when trying to speak French. Napoleon was short. He had an accent, wasn't from France, and didn't follow the same mannerisms as his peers. This led him to being bullied, and the bullying transformed his once gentle disposition into a domineering inferiority complex. When he finished his studies, he continued his military training to become an artillery officer, but soon after, his father died and his lack of income forced him to complete 2 years into one. He did, and he was the first Corsican to graduate from this school. When he graduated in 1785, he was 16 years old. In a few years' time, the French Revolution would begin. Napoleon was a supporter of the revolution, and he spent his days back in Corsica. He was soon promoted to a captain in the army in 1792. He was 23 years old. He supported the French rule in Corsica, however he butted heads with his mentor who was also head of the resistance in Corsica. Because of that, Napoleon and his family had to flee to the mainland. While in his 20s between 1793 and 1799, we have the French Revolutionary Wars. Britain, Russia, Prussia, the Holy Roman Empire, Austria, and amongst other countries were pitted against France. Europe was outraged by the revolution and its upheaval. France was like a child having a tantrum, and anyone who got in its way was perceived as a threat, and force was used to push them back. This resulted in a lot of battles with outside countries, and this was when Napoleon, who was still a relatively unknown military general, rose to prominence. After taking down Austria, who was the main ally to the French royal family, Napoleon wanted to go to Egypt to weaken Britain's power from the Indian subcontinent. Though overall a failed campaign, back home in France, people really liked his guts and they praised him. When he returned to Paris in 1799, France was doing okay. About 50-50. They had a series of victories in their belts, but the country was bankrupt and the French people were dissatisfied with how the new republic was being governed. So Napoleon saw an opportunity. He wanted more power, and with his fame managed to stage a coup against the current republic. He won and established himself as the first consul, which was head of a more autocratic government rather than sole ruler. He wasn't emperor yet. Napoleon, just being himself, went back into battle again, of course winning, and in 1802 France and Britain signed a peace treaty. This ended the Revolutionary War since pretty much a decade. Finally, Europe calmed down and Napoleon became super popular with all his wins and all his fame, both domestically and abroad. The French people came out on huge numbers to approve of Napoleon. They said, "Good job, yes, this is a fantastic leader," and they made him dictator for life. Basically, he got a promotion by the people. To no surprise, a year later, with his love for battle, he went back to war again, and at this time, European countries were, to simply put, just mad. They were still very bitter with the results of the last few wars since the revolution, so they all just started bombarding France one by one from all directions, and this was called the Coalition War, which consisted of Coalition Wars 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Inside France, people were just tired of all the revolutionary fighting, and Bonaparte knew this. They wanted peace and didn't care if it was a first consul or an emperor who gave it to them. Even though he was a dictator, he wanted more power and created an imperial system based off of the Roman model. Then, he launched another referendum and Napoleon was elected as Emperor of the French by a tally exceeding 99%. As now emperor and fighting the coalition wars, it was just too much for a single country. He slowly lost one after another over a period of 9 years from 1805 to 1814. In 1814, at the age of 45, Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He went into exile, and this was when the French monarchy was restored, called the Bourbon Restoration. You had the brothers of King Louis XVI come back to power. Napoleon escaped in 1815 and fought the final 7th Coalition War to try and retake control, but it lasted only 100 days, then he lost. He was exiled to St. Helena, a British island between South America and Africa. Napoleon died in May 1821 at the age of 51. The cause of his death is debated, as some say he died of stomach cancer, like his father, while others say it was arsenic poisoning.